Welcome to the Medical Marijuana and Wellness Seminar Series. Tonight's topic will be cannabinoids, CBD, THC, CBN, Delta-8, and more. Very, very important part of medical cannabis, and having a firm understanding will help you get the most out of your medical cannabis program. Tonight, I'm joined by Amy Green, an RN at MMTC of Florida, who actually helped me put together the video that you'll see tonight. Amy, welcome to the webinar.
Hey, Mark, thanks for having me tonight. I appreciate being here.
Well, I appreciate all the help you're doing. We'll obviously hear more from you as we go along. And also, many people ask about cannabinoids and the dispensaries. So how do I know which product I'm getting? How can I find the right products? And so tonight's sponsor is Surterra Wellness. We have two representatives from Surterra. First, I'd like to introduce Forrest Haag. Forrest, welcome.
Good evening. Thanks for having us, Mark. We are happy to be here. Education is a big component of everything that we do, so we're excited to share this with you guys.
You're the product marketing manager, so we're going to zero in on the products tonight. So you're on the hot seat. And then Jay, you've joined us. You're with Surterra, and you obviously know quite a bit about cannabis and are going to help us be able to answer some questions. Is that correct?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Jay. I've been working with Surterra for a little over a year now as a patient advocate and product guide here in the store. So if any of you folks are in the Gainesville area and want to come through to your local Surterra Wellness, you'll find me and some of my other amazing coworkers who can hopefully help guide you through this journey. So yeah, I'm really excited to use my experience to hopefully be able to answer some questions for folks today.
We have a number of experienced folks in this particular space. So I'd like to remind everyone that this is a program designed to provide you information on medical cannabis. It's not intended to replace your doctor's advice or the advice you get from your medical cannabis practitioner. If you're seeking medical advice, please talk to them and get advice from them. But the information we provide is here to help you and help you head in the right direction. Now, that being said, we put together a video on CBN, which we're going to, on cannabinoids. We'd like to play that for you now. And then afterwards, we're going to answer questions that you might have about this particular topic. And I might remind you that if you look down below, you'll see a Q&A button, Q&A, looks like two little bubbles. Please feel free to ask questions. We're here to really answer your questions, and we're here to actually be able to demystify the products for you. So that being said, let's talk cannabinoids. Welcome to Medical Marijuana and Wellness. Today's subject is going to be cannabinoids, CBD, THC, CBN, Delta-8, and more. Important part of medical cannabis and something that's really important for you to pay attention to if you want to get the maximum benefits out of using medical cannabis. My guest speaker today is Amy Green, an RN who's with MMTC of Florida, who does a lot of patient education. And I should point out that this presentation is for information purposes. Naturally, if you want to find any medical advice, please contact your doctor or your physician. So, Amy, let's talk cannabinoids for a second. First of all, why is cannabis such a big deal? I know that we have a nervous system in our body that we've known about for a long time. But what's interesting is we've discovered that there's also an endocannabinoid system in our body. And this is something they found from studying cannabis that really helps us with pain, anxiety, memory, appetite. And really, this is where the cannabinoids come into play. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So we obviously have a nervous system, as you said. So that's going to, with the nervous system is going to deal with systems like pain, with sensation throughout the body, and it has a lot of different functions. Same thing with the endocannabinoid system. This is a naturally occurring system that's part of your body. Everybody has one, and your body naturally produces cannabinoids. So that's the endocannabinoid. It's inside of your body already.
Yeah, I tend to look at the nervous system. I call it the cell phone system of your body. If something happens, you have a signal that's into your brain that says, Houston, we have a problem. What I find amazing is that for so many years, people studied the nervous system, but never tried to figure out when you said, Houston, we have a problem, what Houston did with that problem. And when we found the endocannabinoid system, we found out that your neurons pass this over to your endocannabinoid system, who then produces endocannabinoids that get sent to your body, various parts of your body that really help you try to stay in what they call homeostasis, or your body tries to stay in balance. That's an interesting little process that goes on. Now, what's interesting about cannabis is that the endocannabinoids that your body is producing naturally are exactly mimicked by phytocannabinoids in the cannabis plant. Tell us a little bit about that, Amy.
Sure. So obviously our body naturally produces cannabinoids. However, we found that the cannabinoids that come from the cannabis plant are essentially identical to the endocannabinoids that our body is naturally producing. So when we use products like cannabis, we are supplementing that system that our body is naturally producing. And that's where we come up with a lot of the benefits of cannabis is those kind of supplements that we're bringing into the body.
What's fascinating to me is that as we get older, and I'm a senior citizen, my body doesn't produce as many endocannabinoids as it did before. So the phytocannabinoids come in and help the body do its job or stay in homeostasis, which is something that's really, really important. I think not only just for senior citizens, but also for people that have had injuries, that have some medical problems or some medical conditions. This is where you can actually help your body do its job naturally. And I think that's an important part what cannabis brings to the party. So looking at the key components of cannabis, there are cannabinoids, terpenes, and flavonoids. Amy, can you explain a little bit about these?
Yeah, absolutely. So cannabinoids are going to be the main parts of the cannabis plant. So that's going to include things like your THC, CBD, CBDA, THCV. There's a whole lot of cannabinoids in the plant. However, you'll also find terpenes, which are what gives cannabis its smell and its taste, along with flavonoids, which also contribute to the smell and the taste of cannabis. And they also provide some anti-inflammatory, neuroprotective, disease prevention effects as well.
Right. You know, it's interesting. There's so much cannabis research being done right now. We know that there are over 200 cannabinoids, of which we're only studying about 120 of them. We know that there are at least 200 terpenes in cannabis and 220,000 in nature, of which, again, we're only studying about 100 of them. Same thing with flavonoids. We're only studying about 20 of them, yet we know there's over 40 of them. So it's an interesting plant. It offers a lot of medical benefits, and there's a lot more research that needs to be done. But what has been done so far is pretty effective. Putting them all together gives you the entourage effect. What does that mean?
Sure. So the entourage effect is how all of these components of the cannabis plant work together to produce effects. So it's not just the cannabinoids and it's not just the terpenes or the flavonoids. It's how all of these different compounds work together to produce the effects of the cannabis plant, whether that is anti-inflammation, pain relief, whether that is anxiety relief. It contributes to all of those things.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's interesting. You can see where the cannabinoids working together with CBD working with THC. The CBD lessens the high or the psychoactive effect of THC. So when you're learning how to dose or trying to figure out your dosing, keeping some CBD around really helps you be able to lessen any negative effects you might get from THC.
Certainly, yeah, it can just make it more comfortable, especially for newer patients, especially if they do not want the euphoric high that can be associated with THC. So adding that CBD can be very beneficial.
Right. And THC and CBD working together really enhance the medical values that are there. You had mentioned earlier about the main components, main cannabinoids, and we're going to go through each one of these, so I don't want to go too much in depth on that. But I do want to point out that there's a lot of uses. The reason that why cannabinoids are important is because they have a lot of properties that really help address a number of conditions. Amy, you see that a lot in your practice.
Yeah, I do. So we have patients that come in for every single condition under the sun, and trying to find that product or that series of products that works well for them is really a big part of it. And so we always talk to patients about different cannabinoids, especially THC and CBD, and how those are going to fit into their treatment plan. Right.
And you see whether it's appetite, inflammation, muscle control, specificity. I didn't pronounce that one too correctly. Mental illness, addiction, and really, if you look at, they talk about future uses, but current uses of cannabis when it looks at, for example, cancer and helping with chemotherapy and radiation and that type of thing. Not to mention including conditions like HIV, multiple sclerosis, lipid, and Crohn's disease. What's fascinating is the National Institute on Drug Abuse down here actually came out and said that medical cannabis is a safe and effective medicine. And I think that's really important. So let's dive into how cannabinoids are formed. And really, there's a component called CBGA, which I think is what we call the godfather of all cannabis. Here's an example of how CBGA then basically morphs into THCA, CBDA, and CBCA. Amy, take us through this, because this is fascinating how you take a plant, and as the plant matures, it produces the different cannabinoids. And by the way, this is not a complete list of cannabinoids. It's just some of the more popular ones and showing where they come from.
Yeah, certainly. So the big thing is, as a cannabis plant is growing, CBGA is going to be the precursor to a lot of these different compounds, whether that is THCA, CBDA, CBCA, or even CBG. It's going to be, like you said, the godfather or the starting point for a lot of these compounds. And then as the plant matures through a combination of heat in the environment and that plant-specific makeup, those compounds are going to change into the final profile for that specific plant.
Yeah, it's
So
very
you might-
interesting. If you take a cannabis plant and you don't heat it over 300 degrees, you can get a lot of THCA, CBDA, and CBCA, which is great for inflammation. It's great for pain, and yet you don't get high. And that's really interesting. A lot of people make their own tinctures where they'll actually take and basically put MCT oil together with their cannabis, cook it at about 180 degrees for 20 to 35 minutes, and produce an oil that gives you the anti-inflammation, anti-pain properties without getting high. I know that's very, very effective.
Certainly. And when you have those raw, quote unquote, raw parts of the cannabis plant, like THCA, CBDA, the biggest thing is you're not going to have the psychoactive effects, but you're still going to have really powerful, anti-inflammatory, antispasmodic effects from those raw parts of the plant.
Sure. And then, of course, once they heat over 300 degrees, that's where you do get your THC and CBDs, CBCs, and CBGs.
Yeah, so when you apply heat to these compounds, it's a process called decarboxylation. All that means is that the form of that compound is changing, and it's changing from an acidic form to a non-acidic form. So that's the difference between THCA and THC. So you've just applied heat and it's changed the structure of that compound. Now, specifically with THC, when you go from THCA to THC, you are going to have psychoactive side effects from THC now. You're also going to have a lot of other effects as well. So you're really going to have a boost in the analgesic, the antibacterial, anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory effects of that compound just by applying heat and changing the base form of that compound.
As it morphs. Same thing with CBD. You look at CBD, there's a lot of more properties that are produced once when it gets heated.
Absolutely. And CBD is one of the most powerful cannabinoids, and probably the best part of it is that it's not going to produce those psychoactive effects that you might get with THC, but you're still getting all of these really important properties. You have the analgesic effects, the anxiolytic effects or anti-anxiety, antibacterial, can also be an antispasmodic, and it can help with neuroprotection. So that's protecting your brain and the nerves and the cells in your brain.
Sure. And we'll go through each of these different cannabinoids as we go along, but also as the product ages, that's where you get into your CBNs, your Delta-8 THCs, and things like that.
Yes. So when we say aged, usually when cannabis is harvested, heat might not necessarily be applied to it. However, it might be dried, and that's part of the aging process. And when you have that drying process, you're going to morph some of these compounds into slightly different compounds. Like THC is going to possibly morph into Delta-8 THC, which is slightly less psychoactive than regular THC.
Right. Now, what's interesting is there are very few plants that actually start producing more medical value as they age or they get heated. Cannabis is just a unique plant from the standpoint of providing medical value. It's just really, really interesting that's there. And we talked about CBG. It really is the genus. It's where everything kind of starts, and then with heat, it really produces a lot of the other cannabinoids. But as a product or as a cannabinoid by itself, it has a lot of medical value.
Absolutely. So CBG is really great for helping with glaucoma. It can help reduce the cell growth rate in cancer cells, so it can help with slowing down some cancers. It can also be neuroprotective and may help with slowing the progression of some diseases such as Huntington's, Alzheimer's, dementia, and other similar illnesses.
Mm-hmm. And it's found in very small quantities because if you think about it, once the plant starts morphing, it's actually reducing the amount of CBG because that CBG is turning into other cannabinoids as it goes along, which is very, very interesting. So same thing goes on with THCA. What it does is it has great medical properties, and it also is, with heated and with time, it'll turn into THC. But let's talk about the medical properties of THCA because it's a very popular product.
It is. So THCA is the non-psychoactive form of THC with the addition of an acid. So this is like the original form of THC before any heat has been applied, and this compound really has a lot of benefits, including being a great anti-inflammatory. It can help with the slowing the progression of cancer growth. It can be a neuroprotectant. It can help with treating MS, Alzheimer's, or Parkinson's.
Right. So it's really something that really helps quite a bit. It also helps stimulate your appetite as well. Now, that then was morphed into THC or Delta-9. Delta-9, although it does have the psychoactive or psychotropic effects, it is very, very important as a medicine because it does a number of things, important things like blocks the pain signals to your brain, but the medical benefits of THC are just enormous.
Absolutely. So THC or Delta-9 THC is going to be the most well-known cannabinoid. When people think of cannabis, they're really thinking about THC or Delta-9 THC. This specific component of the cannabis plant has so many medical benefits that research is still coming out on. So it's really great for anxiety, epilepsy, glaucoma, insomnia, low appetite, muscle spasticity, and on and on and on. There are just so many things that this particular compound can possibly help with.
And working with CBD helps to lessen the psychoactive or high effects. So it turns out to be very effective when they both work together. Let's talk a little bit about CBD because CBD is really, really important from the standpoint of addressing the CB1, CB2 receptors, but also it has more receptors than just that. In other words, we found out that CBD in essence is a super vitamin.
It really is. So when we think of the cannabis plant, there's two main receptors that we think of, and that's going to be CB1 and CB2. However, when considering CBD, there are so many additional receptors in the body that this particular compound can attach itself to. So it's going to connect to the 5-HT receptor, which is a serotonin receptor, which can help with digestion, blood flow. Then you have your A2A receptor, which is part of your inflammation and coronary circulation process. Your VR1 receptor, which is responsible for body temperature and pain perception. And then you have your GRP55, which is a receptor that is partially responsible for blood pressure in the body.
Right. So it has a lot of medical benefits beyond the CB1 and CB2, which is promoted with a lot of the cannabis literature. Really, CBD is really something that really helps in a lot of different ways with a lot of different conditions. Very important. And this is kind of a map of the different cannabinoids. to the receptors, just to let you know that there is medical science behind this, and it really know that this really works. This will be included in the package you receive after this seminar. CBDA, this is really important.
Absolutely. So CBDA is the acidic form of CBD. So this is the form of the compound that has not had heat applied to it. There's a lot of really great benefits with CBDA. So you have really strong anti-inflammatory benefits, which is probably the number one thing that people use CBDA for. Then you can have the interaction with your serotonin regulation systems, which can affect your mood, your feelings of nausea, vomiting, or intestinal regularities. CBDA also becomes CBD when you apply heat through a process called decarboxylation. All that means, it's a very fancy word for meaning heat was applied and the acidic part of that compound was removed by that heat.
Right. And also it has 100 times more of the binding affinity to the receptors than CBD, which makes it very important to help when you're trying to address things like inflammation that's out there. And of course, as we mentioned, when it's heated, it gets heated, it turns into CBD, which has a tremendous number of medical benefits.
Yeah, certainly. So CBD, since it is the non-psychoactive part of the cannabis plant, a lot of people are using it for its anti-inflammatory effects, anti-seizure effects, especially anxiolytic or anti-anxiety effects, anti-tumor, neuropathic, and nerve pains. There are really just so many things that can be benefited by CBD.
Yeah, and it also helps to address things like MS, helps people get off of the opioid addiction. There's a lot of talk about it, also treating and addressing diabetes and the insulin that we have, ALS, and other benefits, including Parkinson's and MS and schizophrenia. So CBD is a very important and probably one of the primary cannabinoids in cannabis. One cannabinoid that gets a lot of press is CBN. It's basically known to help with insomnia.
Yeah, and the really interesting thing about CBN is one of its effects is it usually gives you a very heavy body feeling, which is great for both relaxation and for getting to sleep and staying asleep. So it can help improve the quality of sleep that you're getting, which is so important for just body recovery and making sure that your body is functioning the way that it should be. But it also has a lot of other benefits, also anti-inflammatory. It can help with glaucoma. It can help stimulate your appetite. And it's been shown to help delay the onset of symptoms associated with ALS and other neurodegenerative conditions. Yeah,
it also helps promote bone growth. So if you have an injury, and CBN is something that's really good to use. CBC is not got a lot of press, but this is one that has a lot of great medical value.
Certainly. So the really nice thing about CBC is it's not going to produce any psychoactive effects. So it's not going to increase psychoactive effects that you might be getting from a compound such as THC. And it can help, it may actually intensify the effects of THC, but on its own, it's not going to have any psychoactive effects. Now, CBC does originate as CBCA, or the acidic form. And again, through the process of decarboxylation or applying heat, you're going to remove that acid group and you end up with CBC. Now, CBC does not have a high binding affinity for either CB1 or CB2. However, it does act on the TRPV1 and TRPA1 receptors, which are responsible for detecting and regulating your body temperature.
Right. And also, those also have a lot to do with that same receptors also have a lot to do with playing a role in pain. And again, working with THC, it really helps to help you reduce the amount of pain that you have in your body. So, the medical benefits not only are anti-inflammatory, but also antidepressant.
Certainly. And a lot of that is how it's interacting with the different receptors in your body and whether it is blocking them or assisting other cannabinoids with accessing that particular receptor.
Right. And it's great for migraines and also anti-cancer effects, which is very important for a lot of people. Let's talk about THCV. Again, not necessarily something that people know much about, but really an important part of cannabis.
Certainly. So THCV, it's a compound that does not appear naturally in large quantities in the cannabis plant, but it is still a very important cannabinoid. One of the biggest parts of THCV is it can actually help suppress the feelings of hunger, which can be great if a patient is trying to avoid the munchies or those kind of hunger pangs that you might get with THC.
Right. It also helps with bone growth, again, for people that are trying to recover from different from injuries that are there. This is one of the main cannabinoids that addresses things like Parkinson's, for example, and that's really, really important that's out there.
Certainly. And it's also been shown to have some effects on epilepsy as well.
Yes, good point. That's an excellent point. CBDV, again, one of those cannabinoids that are important.
Certainly, yeah. Again, this is a non-psychotropic part of the cannabis plant, so it's not going to contribute to the psychoactive feelings that a patient is experiencing, but it does have a lot of great benefits, including recovering from memory deficits or neurological deficits, as well as it may help with controlling obsessive compulsive behaviors. Mm-hmm. And then it can also be a potential treatment for neuronal hyperexcitability.
Right, that's very important. Good cannabinoids. Now, we know of the two well-known cannabinoids, which is THC and CBD. THC primarily targets the CB1 receptors, although it does address CB2 receptors as well, but CBD primarily addresses the CB2 receptors and is also found in hemp. I think the main characteristic is one's psychoactive and the other one's not psychoactive. But when we go down into looking at that whole area being psychoactive, Delta-8 comes to mind. And really, Delta-8 is really let's say a variation of Delta-9, but it's not as strong.
That's right. Yeah. So Delta-8 is very similar to Delta-9, but it does have some marked differences, including being about half as psychoactive as Delta-9. So you could expect to not have such a psychoactive experience or feeling if you are using that product.
Right. And it's mainly found in a lot of the Delta-8 products that you see on the market are really derived from hemp that's out there, because the THC that's being used in cannabis is being used for a lot of other medical purposes that's out there. But Delta-8 has a lot of medical benefits. When you take a look at it, it's actually a pretty good product, although it has some warnings. We'll talk about that in a moment. But tell me about the benefits of Delta-8.
Sure. So Delta-8 can help with a lot of different systems in the body. For the stomach, it can help with antiemetic effects or stopping vomiting or relieving vomiting. For appetite, it's been shown to improve appetite, but without the heavy psychoactive effects that you might get with Delta-9 THC. For the brain, it's going to have neuroprotective properties by increasing the body's level of acetylcholine, which can help with memory retention. For pain, Delta-8 does bind to the CB1 receptor, which mediates pain in the body. For sleep, Delta-8 can be really relaxing and soothing and can help you get a good night's sleep. And then definitely for relaxation, Delta-8 can help work as an anxiolytic to help reduce some anxiety and just help with the feeling of relaxation and kind of winding down.
Yeah. Now you find Delta-8, just like Delta-9, is found in cannabis. It's in the plant itself. But what's been happening lately is people have taken and tried to isolate Delta-8, mainly using hemp that's out there. And I think the biggest problem is the quality of products, because hemp-based products here in the United States are really not regulated. There's a lot of warnings about Delta-8 products that are on the market. You might want to mention a little bit about that, because you really want to check out what they call the certificate of analysis on the products. I know that when I did a webinar on Delta-8, we went out and went to literally 5 different outlets that sold Delta-8 and only found that one of them had a COA on the side of the package. That's very dangerous, because a lot of this stuff can be candidly junk, not being regulated by either the federal government, state governments, or the medical marijuana programs in the states. this is a real problem. And I know that that's what's creating a lot of the negative press that Delta-8's getting.
Certainly. And that's a lot of this is exactly because you said it's not regulated. And so you don't have the same requirements for testing that you have with the state regulated medical marijuana markets. When you have mandatory testing, you're able to tell the quality and any adulterants in the product. You're able to see if it's been exposed to any molds or funguses. All of those things are normally tested for in state regulated programs. However, when you have a product that is not being regulated like that, you don't have that same testing or that same requirement for testing.
Right. And the reason we bring that up is because Delta-8 is found in such small quantities, especially in the marijuana plant. It's very hard to produce large quantities of the product at a competitive price. So if you find a fairly inexpensive Delta-8 product, beware, because it may not have the quality that's needed. And again, it's not regulated. So I would go with, if it doesn't have a COA, especially one that has to do with that particular package, not the batch, but that package, really buyer beware. That's one of the real negatives, unfortunately, of Delta-8. Now, let's talk a little bit about what a COA looks like. It's basically a barcode that's on the product, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. And any product that you get from a state regulated medical marijuana company, they are going to be able to produce the certificate of analysis for any product that you purchase, whether that is an edible, a tincture, or a vape. They're going to be able to show you that it was tested for heavy metals, foreign materials, residual solvents, any contaminants, any mycotoxins, funguses, anything that you could think they are testing for it.
Yeah. What I also want to show is that now we use the COA from a medical cannabis product from Move. So this is not a Delta-8 product, and Move does not put out or sell Delta-8 by itself. But I do want to point out that these COAs should be fairly universal, and that when you have a regulated program like a Florida medical marijuana dispensary authorized by the state of Florida, you will find that these COAs are out there, and it's universal between really quality hemp products or medical marijuana products. But these are absolutely critical to make sure that you have a safe product to use. And I cannot emphasize more, the problem with a lot of Delta-8 products is they're not safe. And that's what gives the image and the product really a bad name. I mean, let's go back and kind of wrap up, because we've been talking about the different cannabinoids, and let's kind of wrap up on this slide. There's over 200 different cannabinoids we know of, but really there's an interesting process where the plant actually produces a number of medical components in it through the cannabinoids. Is that correct?
Yeah. So obviously you have the CBGA, which is, like you said, the grandfather of the cannabinoids. And then as the plant matures, it's going to morph those compounds into different cannabinoids, whether it's THCA, CBDA, CBCA, CBG. You have, like you said, hundreds of cannabinoids that it can morph into as it matures. And it's just, this is one thing where the COA really helps you with seeing what is exactly in your product.
Right. Now, we only touched on a very small number of the cannabinoids that are available. We could spend literally hours talking about the different cannabinoids that are out there. We're really trying to hit what I call the Hall of Fame, of the ones that are the most popular. Hopefully this has answered a lot of your questions about cannabinoids, what they can be used for and what they're good for. And Amy, I want to thank you for your help. And for those of you that are watching, please feel free to take a look at following us on social media. Go to our YouTube page. You'll find more videos on cannabis and the use of cannabis. And feel free to sign up for our webinars at Marijuana Aware, weekly webinars on how medical cannabis can help with various conditions. And or if you want to, send us an email. Thank you very much for joining us. And we look forward to hearing from you. Well, hopefully you got a little bit of a picture of cannabinoids and what they do. I think that one question that many people have is, when I go to a dispensary, how do I know which product, which cannabinoid is in the product and which cannabinoid you have? Forrest and Jay, do you want to kind of take that question on and answer it? I know you have a slide or two to help clarify that.
can hop in and hopefully help clarify that a little bit. Something that you mentioned in that video was COAs. And so, at least speaking on patients' experiences coming into a Surterra wellness dispensary, you can always open up that line of dialogue with the folks that you see when you come in. And we're happy to walk you through the COAs and talk to you about the cannabinoids that are found in each individual product, whether it be strains that you're already interested in or routes of administration that you're already comfortable with. What's being pulled up right now, we have our full spectrum products as well, which are lines of our products that have more cannabinoids in them than just THC because of the ways that they're produced. So at least in my experience, I found that those products in particular are really helpful for patients who are looking to really tend to their pain or help with sleep, help with muscle convulsions, all of the types of things that really a more holistic and synergetic approach to these products can be useful in.
Sure. So when I go into your dispensary, how do I know what's in the product, and can you explain the different, let's say, product configurations and profiles, both from a cannabinoid and a terpene aspect?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, I think that it's really useful to discover that information from consulting the folks that you see when you come into the dispensary. Being able to access the terpene profiles and the cannabinoids that are in each individual product is something that we're happy to help you with. And so really coming in and being vulnerable with us about why you're turning to cannabis products and what you're specifically looking to get out of the experience. From there, we can help guide you to specific types of products and really help you in that education and research phase as well. I know it can be really overwhelming to try to learn everything on your own. And so that's what we're there for, to happily help.
Sure. And you have a number of different products, which I think is great to be able to address a number of different needs. So let's take a look at some of the questions that have been brought up. And these questions were submitted prior to the webinar. And by the way, thanks everyone for giving us these questions. We're going to answer some of those and then get on to the questions that were brought up during the webinar. First question: relieves pain, muscle and joint pains better, CBD or CBN? Forrest and Jay, do you want to take that one?
I can hopefully help with this just a little bit as well. I know that, at least speaking on behalf of the types of products that I see at Surterra, most of them are going to have more CBD than CBN in them. And so while it might not necessarily clarify the question of which will be most effective, I know that our CBD ratio products can be really, really useful in relieving muscle and joint pain. And so that is what I would turn folks towards, given our current market availability right now.
Mm-hmm. That's also a very good question. I think that comes up. It depends on the person itself. Some people react, again, cannabis is very personalized and it reacts differently for different people's bodies, their metabolism and that type of thing. But, I would say try both. But I have found that CBD, at least in my particular case, helps quite a bit. And I find it, especially with athletic endeavors, when I do something that's very strenuous, I also tend to look at CBN as really something that helps me in that area here. One question that comes up is, how much CBN do I take to regulate sleep and insomnia? I think it's hard to answer any question about how much dose I should take with cannabis, because cannabis, and by the way, with pharma drugs as well, pharma drugs base their formulas off of weight. In the case of cannabis, we actually have people take a look at how cannabis affects your body, because certain people will have, for example, if you take a look at your tolerance for alcohol or your tolerance for caffeine, it really depends on you. Some people can have one drink and be done for the night, and some people could drink the whole bottle and they're just getting started. Cannabis is just the same way, and CBN can be the same way. So I guess the best way that I would try to answer that question is go low and go slow. Try some CBN, find out how it's working, increase the dosage every day or two, just to see, as the relief gets better and better, you'll feel the relief. Your body will tell you what's working for you and where you should be. You'll get to a point where it may not be working as well for you, and that's where you've passed your, what you call your dosing threshold. So you might want to back off and really go back to where you were before. But it's something that each individual really has to determine themselves. It's really important. This is a dosing question, and I think dosing is one of the most important parts of cannabis. By the way, we are doing a dosing webinar at the end of June. If you want to join us for that, we can explain that whole process. CBD to THC ratios. This is really important. Forrest and Jay, Surterra does a great job of providing these ratios. Do you want to take this question?
Sure, that sounds great. Yeah, I tell folks all of the time that something that really stands out to me about Surterra is our Surterra Wellness line, which features several different types of products, each at different ratios of CBD to THC and featuring different terpenes as well. And so with that really wide variability that we offer, it really allows folks to find out what works best for them and incorporate different ratios for different things at different points throughout their day and evenings. And so I think that versatility is really important. And like you mentioned so eloquently in the video, CBD and THC work really well together. And so having products that feature both, I think, is really vital in providing the types of therapeutic benefits that a lot of our patients are looking for.
Sure. And one of the questions that comes up is, how do other cannabinoids influence my high? Well, obviously, certain cannabinoids, especially like THC, affect the quote unquote high that you get more than something like CBD. But I think this is a question, maybe Amy, do you want to take a stab at this one?
Yeah, I can try and take a stab at this one. So there are many cannabinoids that may increase the high from THC. And it's just knowing how those different cannabinoids are going to affect you, because it might be different for different people. So cannabinoid that might not do much for me may cause more sedation for you. And it is some trial and error there.
Yeah, I think that's very, very important. Again, I cannot emphasize more that really this cannabis is a very personalized medication. And so really, you've really got to try it to find out what your proper therapeutic dose is. However, your body will tell you. A doctor really isn't going to tell you. You'll find out. You'll feel better. You'll feel much, much better. And you'll know when you got to that, when you've reached that therapeutic, the right level. One other question that came up is, why do strains higher in CBG help me recover faster after a seizure? Forrest and Jay, you want to take that one?
Okay, sweet. Yeah, I can speak a little bit personally about this as well. A few years ago, experiencing seizures is what really pointed me towards cannabis products at all. And it was my experience that strains and products that were really high in CBD were most helpful in helping combat that. And so I think there's been a lot of research about CBD in helping to be an anticonvulsant and helping people lessen their likelihood of experiencing seizures. And so I think all of that kind of has to do with what was mentioned in the video as well, about how there's different receptors throughout your body and endocannabinoid systems that different cannabinoids hit differently. And so it's really just having an understanding of those body symptoms and different ailments and how they all impact each other that can really help, I think, guide people towards products that will be right for them. So like I said, in my personal experience, things at least that are high in CBD can be really beneficial for folks who experience seizures.
Sure. And a lot of CBD products have CBG in it. I think it's important I think we talked about the difference between Delta-8 and Delta-9. And Forrest and Jay, do you want to talk about, do you have strains with THCV?
I think I might be able to answer that one. That's actually something that I have not come across too often in my experiences. A lot of the cannabinoids that I think the majority of our products have are THC. We have product that is just THCA, which is really interesting and cool as well. And then products with CBD, of course, mentioning those ratio products that we've kind of gone back to a few times. But yeah, I'm not too sure about the THCV specifically, but am really excited for this, presenting me with an additional opportunity to continue my education and hopefully be able to point towards more of those strains in the future.
Sure. Now you have a product. This is a good question. This question brought up on the one I had. You have a 1-to-1 product, a Revive and a Soothe. What's the difference?
Yeah, that's actually like my favorite question that I get quite often in store. A lot of folks use that one-to-one ratio and think that the impact on their day-to-day or their experience of their symptoms would be the same. But you can see that the terpene profiles from this photo are a little bit different. And so that difference in the terpenes are really going to help with the more specific effects that you would get from either the Revive, which is one of our one-to-ones, or the Soothe, which is the other one-to-one. So I kind of sometimes too compare the Soothe more to what you would experience from an indica, even though our Surterra wellness line is not strain specific, so it's not an indica, but it's definitely going to help you with that sense of relaxation. I think it's really good for folks who experience anxiety. Whereas our Revive, I compare more to what you might expect from a sativa. So again, while our products are not strain specific in the Surterra wellness line, the Revive is going to be a lot more beneficial in energizing you or helping provide mental clarity throughout the day. When I first started working at Surterra, was still pursuing my undergraduate degree, and the Revive was like my best friend while I was in class because it would really help me maintain my focus without really experiencing that psychoactivity, because the benefit of that one-to-one is that that CBD helps to kind of counteract that associated high that you get with most cannabis products. And so the Revive can be really great in kind of just giving you that uplifting sensation, helping with motivation, mental clarity. It was great with my ADHD. And then the Soothe alternatively helps you relax more, kind of help you with any anxiety symptoms you might have, can even help with pain management throughout your body as well.
And this is a very good example of where, although you have a one-to-one ratio from a cannabinoid standpoint, the terpene profile really makes a difference in the product. That's what brings the medical value there. And by the way, I should point out, when you look at, for example, if you look at the Soothe slide, it starts with terpinolene, then linalool, where when you take a look at the Revive slide, it's reversed. That has to do with, you start with the most, does this say, the terpene that is higher in quantity, and then you go down. Is that correct?
It's actually the opposite. So the terpenes that you see at the very bottom with those kind of larger colored half circle lines
Okay.
are going to be the ones that are most dominant in those products.
Great. Thank you. I was kind of trying to figure out how that all worked. So thank you very much. But you can see that the difference is really the terpenes that are there. So float, there's a question about the float. It causes arousal reaction. You want to take this question?
I would love to. I actually, in other lines of my work, am a sex educator, so I was really interested by this question. And I think that the overlap between sex education and cannabis education is becoming more and more prominent. So hopefully soon we'll have more research to be able to answer these kinds of questions with more clarity. But for now, while we're not entirely sure which terpenes and which cannabinoids are really tied to different responses that we might have with our arousal or pleasure, or that we might experience during sex, different types of cannabis products can help soothe anxiety, can help relax your muscles, things that have an overlap during our sexual experiences that can be really useful. But something that's been mentioned multiple times throughout this presentation is how personalized cannabis can really be for each person. So unfortunately, it's not really possible to avoid that guinea pigging sensation. A lot of figuring out which cannabis products work well for you, or might be able to avoid different experiences that you might not be looking for, really just comes with personal experience. But with what I mentioned earlier about certain strains and certain terpenes being able to reduce anxiety or relax your muscles, what folks have been expressing the most is that limonene can be really beneficial in helping with arousal. So if that's something that you're looking for, strains with limonene might be useful, or if it's something that you are trying to mitigate, maybe avoiding limonene might be best for you.
Sure. Now, great. Thank you very much. That was a good answer. a few years ago, you had Surterra featured what they call Florida's finest, and one of the good cultivars was Tillamook strawberry, but I don't think you put that out anymore. Is there a comparable? Cultivar right now? Does Surterra offer?
Yeah. So we get these questions a lot. A lot of folks have different beloved strains from Florida's finest. And that was actually a part of the company before I was. So while I can't give any kind of personal recommendations about what might be most comparable to Tillamook strawberry, I did consult some of my coworkers before this webinar who have been with the company a little bit longer, as well as doing a little bit of research into the Tillamook strawberry strain. And I think the strain that we have right now that might be most comparable would be Dead Hot Strawberries, which you can find sometimes in our Florida depth flower if that is a more preferred route of administration for you, or we almost always have it in our concentrated products or our CDT carts if vaping or dabbing is something that you're more looking forward to.
Sure. A very good question is, how can I find out how much you have left to be fully dispensed? That's a question of, again, Florida trying to regulate or limit the amount of cannabis we're using. Amy, is there a good answer to that question?
Sure. So the best way to find out how much you have left on your recommendations is actually to log directly into your Office of Medical Marijuana Use profile. What you do is you go down to the section where it lists all of your open routes of administration. And then when you click on that, it's going to bring up all of the different routes. And there's a calculator there now. It's going to be right next to the amount that it says that you have left. And I really recommend using this calculator because it's going to allow you to see when you're going to get those milligrams or ounces back on your recommendation. Because obviously right now, the state of Florida has implemented the 70-day rolling period for oral, topical, sublingual, inhalation, edibles, and suppository routes, and then the 35-day rolling period for smokable flower.
Great. Now, one good question is, I need directions to slowly get off oxycodone without head euphoria. Now, I think there's really two ways of approaching this. First is, obviously, sit down with your medical marijuana doctor and talk to him or her about that. It might help you quite a bit, or the practitioner that's working with you as well. But also, from the standpoint of Surterra, you do consultations, is that correct?
Yeah, so something that I think really sets us apart from other dispensaries is the care and time that we'll put into the folks who come in. And so actually right now I am in our consult room, which is something that's featured in most of our locations, where if you feel more comfortable coming into a slightly more private location, we can talk to you here, or we can walk you through some of our product displays, or just sit down on the couches with you wherever you're the most comfortable. And if our patients are comfortable sharing with us their history of experiences, the different symptoms that they have, or really just any of the reason why they turn towards cannabis products, we really try our best to listen to them compassionately and offer them as much guidance as we can. And so we have folks come in with all different types of ailments, all different types of reasons that they've turned towards cannabis products. And we really try our best to take our time to get to know them. I know for me, at least, one of the most fulfilling parts of my job is creating those sustainable relationships with patients and getting to see them come in continuously, hearing about how our product recommendations worked for them or maybe didn't work and we have to tweak it, but really having those ongoing relationships with folks so that we can make sure that we're getting you the products that work best for you. And that are really personalized towards you. So it's something that is a part of my experience with Surterra, at least, that I take a lot of pride in, and that makes me, really happy to be a part of this company.
So one of the questions that comes up is, if you take CBD and let it build up in your system for a couple of months, will it help reduce the symptoms of opioid withdrawal? Now, again, it depends on each person, but I think that CBD alone is not going to help you do that. I think you're going to need some THC in there. So I guess Jay or Amy, do you want to chime in on that? Because I do think you're going to need to have some CBD or THC in there to really help you with that opioid withdrawal.
Yeah, Jay, if you want to take that, that'd be great.
Sure, absolutely. So, something that this question kind of already mentions is letting CBD kind of work up and build up in your system for several periods of time. And I think that that would help, like I just said, over time reduce the symptoms. But something that makes CBD and THC work so well together is that THC can help offer that more immediacy when it comes to relief. And so I think as long as it's something that we're slowly building up with patients who might not have any experience with cannabis products and THC, making sure that they don't have any kind of jolting experiences or adverse experiences that would turn them away from these types of products, but still provide them with the relief that they're looking for is really important. So I would say that CBD can definitely help over time when it comes to symptoms of opiate withdrawal, but there might be a benefit in incorporating THC as well to help you more immediately experience that relief.
I think CBD is a great product and it does a lot of great things. And in use for what it really is intended for, especially for inflammation and to complement THC, it really is effective. I just think when it comes, a lot of people who take opioids are taking it for pain relief. And I just think there isn't really CBD is not really designed for just pain relief. If you reduce inflammation, you reduce pain and it'll help with that category. But as far as pure pain itself, like I have 7 herniated discs in my neck. And although CBD helps reduce the inflammation, which reduces some of the pain, I need to have some THC in there to really be able to really regulate the pain. But again, when looking at withdrawal from opiates, you're going to need some THC. Don't be afraid to use it. Again, go low and go slow. Find out what your tolerance is, and you'll be able to manage that. I think that's really important. Next question is using marijuana for pain control so I can sleep has been transformative, but brain fog keeps me from functioning during the day. I think a lot of that really depends on when you take it and how you take it, and also the different terpenes that are there. Do you want to take this, Jay, or you want to try? Amy, do you want to take this one on?
Yeah, so I can try this one. Do you mind putting the question back up? I do apologize. Thank you so much. Okay. The biggest thing with brain fog is usually it's going to be a dosing related issue. So what I would recommend is adding in CBD. It's going to lower some of that headiness and the psychoactivity from the THC, just making it a little bit easier. And you might find that you're waking up a little bit easier without so much of that brain fog.
Yeah, that it really is. It's important. This is really a dosing issue, and it's something that should be addressed. I think if you address it from that perspective, it will really help control the brain fog issue that's there. More questions? What caution should you take not to develop cancer from smoking? Vape hurts my throat. Well, it's interesting because if you're smoking, for example, cigarettes by themselves, the carcinogens are really what you're trying to really, the carcinogens are what are causing the problems, which you don't have necessarily in the inhalation products that you find in cannabis. Jay, do you want to take that? Or Amy, you want to try that one?
I can take it, especially because my coworker brought up a really interesting point to this question, which is not necessarily related to vaping, but more so smoking flower. But using a hemp wick can actually be kind of useful for any folks who might be worried about any kind of, like other substances that might be present during their smoking experience, and it just helps you inhale less butane from your lighter. So sometimes just small adjustments like that can make a difference for folks who are worried, but we also really suggest if you have a family history of cancer, or if vaping is something that actively hurts your throat, to look towards other routes of administration. There are a lot of different ways that you can administer marijuana products to yourself. So like you see on this slide, inhalation is only one way when trying to absorb cannabis products, but you can also apply them orally, sublingually, and topically. So something like edibles, tinctures, TheraGels, or even our full spectrum oil or RSO can be really beneficial for folks who are still looking for that full spectrum benefit, but are reserved when it comes to smoking their products.
Sure. And I can't emphasize more, if vaping is a problem, there are other routes of administration for cannabis. And I think that's one of the benefits of cannabis. It's not a one-trick pony. There's a lot of different ways of going. What can I take to calm my anxiety and lessen my pain while giving me the ability to function without becoming very high? This is a great question, Forrest and Jay. You have some great products for this.
Yeah, so when I was reading this question in particular, the first thing that came to my mind is our Zen line. So it's something from our Surterra wellness line that has 1 part CBD to 4 parts THC. So you're still getting that THC, you're still going to get a little bit of that psychoactivity so that you have that, like I said, more immediate relief and can really help with your anxiety and pain management. But because there's still that CBD there, you're not going to get that full potency of THC that might feel too inundating for some folks who just might not have as much experience with THC and cannabis products. So our Zen line is definitely something that I would recommend to those types of folks. Or even if you think that 1-to-4 ratio is still a little bit too high for you, you can even check out our Soothe line that we mentioned at the very beginning, which features that 1-to-1 ratio of CBD to THC, but is really meant to help alleviate folks' anxiety, as well as just kind of calm them down throughout the day.
Right. Yeah, I think that's very, very important. So let's get back to the questions here. Let's go back to the questions here for a second. When going to urgent care, hospital, or ER, does it show if you are a registered medical marijuana user? Amy, you think that's right up your alley?
Sure. So the only people who are able to see if you are a registered medical marijuana patient are the patients themselves, dispensary personnel, physicians that are recommending medical marijuana, and law enforcement that have access to the Office of Medical Marijuana Use database. If you go to urgent care, a hospital, or an ER, they will not know you're a medical marijuana patient unless you tell them. It is HIPAA protected medical information, so they only know if you tell them. However, I will caveat this by saying I always recommend that you be open and honest with your healthcare provider so that they have a full picture of all of the medications that you're using, including medical cannabis. But again, it's always going to be your choice whether you choose to disclose that or not.
I will emphasize that, and I'll back that up and emphasize that you should always let your medical professional know you're using medical cannabis. Let them know you're using even any holistic products itself. Give them all the data that they should have to really be able to address your particular condition. It's only going to be to your benefit to do that. Next question is a very good one. It says, I have severe pain in my spine and use a wheelchair. What products one, put me to sleep and keep me asleep, and number 2, help with pain in the daytime without putting me to sleep? Now, I'm gonna Jay, I'm gonna have you take a stab at this question, but before you do that, I want to point out this again goes back to dosing. I know that, for example, I have found that when you use the edible products, edibles really may take up to 2 hours to work, so you got to be very careful. It's what I call be very, very careful with the edibles. About the time you think they're not working and you take another one is about the time it kicks in. But I will tell you that before I sleep at night, I'm a chocoholic. So I do take a little square of chocolate. It does help me sleep through the night because it gives me that 8 to 10 hours of coverage that I do need to be able to get a good night's sleep. If I take a tincture or use a vape pen, I wake up in the middle of the night. That'll help me. But you need to also use a different type of product. In other words, instead of using an edible before bed, when I wake up in the morning, for example, sometimes I wake up with a very high level of pain because my herniated discs can give me a level of pain of 7 or an 8. I'll use a vape pen to immediately relieve the pain right there and then use a tincture to be able to last me through the morning to be able to get pain relief that I need without getting high. I think there's a combination of product. It's really a dosing question of a combination of product. Jay, do you want to address that as well?
Yeah, honestly, that answer was so informative and extremely useful. I'll just kind of supplement it with mentioning our products more explicitly that I think could be really useful. I find it also just very interesting that you mentioned the chocolate, because we all use and swear by specifically our dark chocolate to help us with sleep. And we have a wheelchair user herself who works with us in the dispensary, and her hands down favorite products are the chocolates. So I just found it to be, this like cosmic alignment that you mentioned chocolate for this question in particular. But for the products that can help with sleep, we do have our Dream line, which is in the Surterra Wellness ratio-based products. And like you just mentioned, using a vape might help with a really quick onset time. So if you struggle falling asleep, that vape can be really useful to put you to sleep more immediately, but really kind of pairing that with either a tincture or an edible will help carry that sleep with you through the night. And so I think, like exactly how you mentioned, kind of marrying dosing and different types of products can really help folks get that personalized, most effective line of treatment for themselves. And in regards to helping treat pain throughout the daytime, I would really recommend our relief vape for, like you said, when maybe your pain levels are higher on that scale, reaching that 7, 8, 9, and you need some kind of immediate relief to feel functional. That relief vape pen will be an exact product that would work in those moments. But then maybe using other types of products throughout the day with more balanced ratios, or even using, they're not on this screen, but even products like our Calm tinctures or our Tranquil tinctures, which are higher in CBD than THC. Our Tranquil is a 19-to-1 ratio, and our Calm is a 12.5-to-1 ratio. Those can kind of help fight inflammation throughout the daytime, which might help reduce pain. And they are going to be so high in CBD and so low in THC that you won't really feel the effects of them throughout the daytime in terms of levels of psychoactivity. So really just using or taking advantage of that full range of products that we offer in the Surterra Wellness line, when it comes to both which ratios you're using as well as the ways that you're administering it to yourself, can really help you find what works best for you.
Right. One of the other questions that comes up is what strains for inhalation products are typically associated with less coughing? And I think this really has kind of two different answers. One is if you get a quality inhalation product, it probably won't be as harsh or difficult on your lungs. But again, it also depends on how sensitive your lungs are to any product at all. It doesn't make any difference if inhalation or what's out there. If you're having trouble with inhalation products in general, even the ones that have been tested, I know that Surterra has some very, very good products. I like your Jimmy Buffett line of packs, tincture vapes, for example. But I think it also depends on the person itself. You have to be very careful if you have a sensitive lungs. That's where you need to take a look at, like we're mentioning, the edibles, the topicals, and that type of thing. Your comments about that, Jay?
Yeah, I think our CDT carts are really well made. So if you're looking for a vape product that is going to be less irritating, I definitely point folks in that direction. But sometimes we even have folks who are unsure how, or just not aware of the fact that they can change the temperature setting on their vape devices as well.
Good
So
point.
sometimes if people come in and they express that they find a particular product to be really irritating, making them cough a lot, we chat more about how they're using the product, and sometimes just lowering that temperature on your vape device can really be more helpful than you might think. So
right.
I would
and I think you're right.
really,
I think adjusting the temperature really makes a difference. Temperature is very, very important, and that's where on your pen you'll see like a low, medium, and high, a blue, green, and red, or sometimes the vape pen will have 4 settings, and that really triggers various terpenes and also cannabinoids. And so that's also of something that can help be able to address how effective the product is, as well as your sensitivity to that. Let's talk about the best strains for fibromyalgia and migraine. Jay, Forrest, do you want to take that one?
sure, I can kind of help answer this question. For fibromyalgia, which is something that can kind of cause different body aches and can have you experiencing high levels of pain throughout the day, we would really recommend something that either is going to be high in THC to help you combat that immediately, or even stuff that is going to be high in the terpene beta caryophyllene can be really useful in pain management throughout the day. And so for us, or even just returning to our Surterra wellness line, I think the relief products are really, really beneficial for pain management. So if that's something that you are experiencing with your fibromyalgia, especially, the relief line is something that I would recommend looking into. And for migraines in particular, we have a hybrid strain called Headband, which is really, really useful in fighting migraines. And something else that we've all found to be pretty useful in fighting migraines is actually using our balm, which is a topical product and has that 1-to-1 CBD to THC ratio, and kind of applying it to your temple area can be really helpful in fighting migraines. So all of that to say, there's a lot of different strains, a lot of different products, and a lot of different ways you can administer them to yourself that can help with this, but hopefully that helped answer the question a little.
Yeah, the answer is there's a number of different answers. And so this is where you can try them yourselves. And also a consultation probably wouldn't hurt to be able to start there, to be able to try to home in on the right product for you. Rebound pain from marijuana. Amy, do you want to try that one?
Yeah, I can try and give that a shot. So usually when you're having rebound pain, it's because you're using a product that is only going to last for a certain amount of time. And this is where using something like a journal can be helpful to keep track of how long a product is working for you, anticipating that, and then using a product to either help you get over that hump, that rebound, or taking a product kind of on the downslope of that first product, so that you're more kind of level throughout the day and you're not having these ups and downs in pain, because we want you to have a level of where you're comfortable and you maintain that comfort. And so planning out when you take products and which products you're using can help control that rebound.
Yeah, I know that when I had knee surgery and knee replacement, I should say, not knee surgery, that you want pain, try a knee replacement. But I found that it was important for me to pay attention to the fact that I needed a regime that really covered 24 hours a day. I needed something in the morning, something in the middle of the day, something at night, and something for sleep. And that was really, really important. And that's where I tried a number of different products, meaning from the standpoint of going low and going slow and really putting that whole program together to the point where I was able to keep my pain level to lower than a 1 in most cases, which when talking to other knee surgery patients was really, really important. But I think the key, and I'm going to emphasize what you pointed out, Amy, the key was journaling. I kept a journal of everything and I was able to go back and see everything that's really there. And I can't emphasize more. I'm not really a big journaling person, but I will tell you in this particular case, it made a major difference. So pay attention to that one. That's really, really important. So how does diet affect getting high? That's a great question. Cannabis doesn't seem to work. Let's just say gluten-free helps better. Cannabis loves fat. Jay, you want to take this one because I think this is important. Diet is very important for cannabis.
Yeah, I tell folks about that all the time. Having different types of saturated fats can really help cannabis bind well to it, especially if you are orally consuming your cannabis. So our full spectrum oil is one of my favorite products. And whenever I recommend it to people, I try to tell them not to eat it on an empty stomach and to maybe pair it with a food that is going to be higher in fat, just to really help it be as effective as it can be. And so I would really, really suggest, I even actually like to infuse our full spectrum oil with coconut oil, because coconut oil has all of the fats that cannabis really loves. So they bind really well together, but really making sure that you are staying fed, your body is nourished, and especially with products that are high in fat, so it has something to bind throughout your system. If you're taking it orally and it's going through your digestive system, is really going to help it be effective. Otherwise, you're not going to really be getting the full benefit from your products, and it might even kind of cause some adverse reaction if your cannabis is trying to bind to something that's just not in your body system. So
Sure.
definitely pair it with some fat. I love to eat it with peanut butter if I'm eating it by itself, or chocolate. I'm also a
Well,
big old
the main mantra that
chocoholic.
I've been told is cannabis loves fats. So anything
Mhm.
that has to do with peanuts, nuts, it really, really helps quite a bit, which is really interesting. Um, One of the questions is, can you prevent yourself from building a tolerance? And I think this is where using a cannabis holiday really, really is important. I know that every 4 to 6 weeks, I will actually take, they recommend taking 4 days off, for example, for get a holiday, just stop using it. And the idea of that is to let your body, which naturally produces endocannabinoids, if it gets used to getting outside endocannabinoids, it can get a little bit lazy. And what it does, it kicks the system back into play. And actually, afterwards, you'll find that you'll need less cannabis to be able to achieve the same effect. However, in my particular case, after about a day, maybe a day and a half, my neck taps my shoulder, and says, "If you don't do something pretty quick, you're going to know I'm here." So I get about a day, day and a half. But I think a holiday every 4 to 6 weeks makes sense. Amy, your comments on that?
Yeah, I would actually totally agree with you. Sometimes just taking that break is just allowing your endocannabinoid system to reset. Even if it's just a day or two, you're still getting that reset or that partial reset, which is important for maintaining a lower tolerance.
Sure. One of the really good questions is, it says, I'm 74 years old. Should I be concerned about using CBD, marijuana with heart issues, other health issues? You First of all, the one thing you have to be careful about is using any marijuana product with heart conditions. You can use them. It is very effective and it is very safe, and it is actually something that a lot of doctors do recommend. But it does require an adjustment to your heart medication, and also it requires your medical marijuana doctor to really pay attention to, from the standpoint of what cannabis products you're using, to be able to do that. Amy, do you want to address this one, because this is more of a medical issue that we really want to address?
Yeah, sure. So, what I have seen and read is that the most prominent interaction is going to be specifically with warfarin or Coumadin, its brand name. And it would require just closer monitoring by your doctor. So, it might require more frequent blood tests just to monitor your INR levels.
Mhm. Right. I think that's important. So the answer is, I would be cautious. I wouldn't be concerned as much as cautious, and just pay attention to that. And again, your doctor, your medical marijuana doctor, can really help you with this. And again, I know a number of folks that have heart conditions using medical cannabis, and it really helps quite a bit. But again, they've made the adjustments, and this is where letting your medical professional know that you're using cannabis is really, really important. Next question is, I have MS and cannot tolerate caryophyllene. What product should I look into? Jay, you want to take this one?
Yeah, of course. So for this, just again, consulting the folks who are in the dispensaries is going to be really, really beneficial in making sure that you are avoiding terpenes that don't work well for you. So going into your dispensary and talking with the folks that you see there, or calling, at least for Surterra, our call center can access all of the terpene profile information for specific products. That can be really, really beneficial. And so, at least speaking on some other types of products that we have that might be really useful for you, again, our Surterra Wellness line is something that I point towards folks all the time, especially people who have pre-existing conditions that have qualified them for cannabis care. So really looking into our products, like either the relief might be useful. I don't think that one has too much caryophyllene in it, or even something with a higher CBD to THC ratio to really make sure that it can be incorporated easily into your routine. So maybe our Serene might be really good for you. But yeah, I would really recommend consulting the folks that you see, so that way they can check the terpene profiles for the particular batch that we have in our inventory. They shouldn't really vary too much, but each batch can be a little bit different. So really checking in with folks there to make sure that we're helping you avoid the terpenes that you want to avoid is what I would always recommend.
Sure. One of the really good questions that comes up is I've heard that to get the most effective medicine, the secret is finding the right terpenes plus high cannabinoid level. Is that true? First of all, I'd say yes, absolutely. The terpene profile is really the key to really getting the medical benefit from cannabis. And I think to have the right terpene profile makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't say you need to match it to a high cannabinoid level. I think you need to match it to the right cannabinoid level. I think there's a difference between the two. The combination of terpenes and also cannabinoids create what they call cultivars. And an example is the Soothe and the Revive product in Surterra's product line. One-to-ones, cannabinoid levels, but different terpenes create a different medical effect. And I think really the secret is to make sure that you have the right cannabinoids. First of all, have the right terpenes, and then you match it to the cannabinoids that match your particular condition. Jay, what's your thoughts on that?
Exactly that. I actually really mentioned, or I really enjoyed how you mentioned that not necessarily a high cannabinoid level, but using your verbiage, the right cannabinoid level is really important. I think a lot of folks come in under the assumption that because something is higher in THC, it's going to be more impactful and more useful, but that's not always the case, especially because of how personalized this care all is, and how the different terpenes might be more effective for you personally. Sometimes folks can get distracted by those THC levels, but really matching the right terpene profile with the cannabinoid level that's best for you and what you're trying to soothe is going to really be the key to you getting the benefit that you want out of these products.
Yeah. And some people, some people really, a higher level of CBD ratio to THC really is more effective. I know my wife is that way. It really helps her quite a bit. So it's really a matter of, again, go low and go slow, but I'd pay attention to making sure you have the right terpenes and the right cannabinoids to address your particular conditions. One of the questions that comes up is, I know the benefits, but the price has been high. Forrest, I'll let you take this one because I know that you have a lot of discounts, but also the price of cannabis products has been coming down quite a bit in the last, let's say, even the last year.
Yeah, it's gone down very drastically in the past year. Down here in Florida, we're still a recreational market, but if you even look at more mature markets, Colorado, things like that, for instance, you see the prices just really drop down. We are in a promo war and often playing a discounted game. So I will say that there are always discounts. There's definitely ways to save. We have things like our loyalty program that gives you additional ways to save. That allows you to stack discounts. You can get up to 70% off on a lot of things. So I'd like to say that you can smart shop and really make out like a bandit pretty well sometimes if you're stacking the right discounts on top of each other.
And one of the things that my wife, who is the consummate Chico shopper and Macy's shoppers, has taught me is pay attention to the weekly promotions that come out. Sign up for that program. I look at that every day, and I have to tell you, I went out and bought products this week from Surterra because of some of the promotions you had to pay attention to. That's really, really there. And I think the loyalty program is really important as well, that to pay attention to that. That can help. I think we need to get to a point where federally this is not illegal anymore and our insurance companies can kick in. I think that's really the real kicker that's here. And the pharma companies are dreading that day because I think it'll be a cold water in their particular programs. But we really need to be able to start being more mature, more adult about how we handle medication, and cannabis is medication. So let's see, what we got here? Claire made a great comment about making a statement about a healthcare provider. Thank you, Claire. I really do appreciate that. Forrest, you had mentioned something about, Jianna brought up a great question. What vendors are not listing the terpene profiles? I know that's something that you've been working very hard on.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't speak to the other dispensaries, but I can say that we absolutely recognize the importance of it. We are making some changes in the way that we do some things as well. So you will start to see terpene profiles on any of our products, whether it be you're seeing them in an email, you're seeing them in a text message, or seeing them on site, trying to include the terpene, at least the top 3 terps in everything that we do. Even in the stores, there's some new graphics in the stores that are showing some of our strains, and we do include the terpenes on those as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I know that's something you've been working hard at, and I think it's something that will be very important because the terpenes are really key.
Yeah, I would
So-
also say that we do, as Jay was saying, we do consults as well. So you can really sit down with our team and go through the terpene profiles of each product to really, again, understand what works best for you. So we have different ways to approach it.
Yeah, and Anonymous had a question, which I think we might have answered earlier about the difference between Soothe and Revive as a Theragel, but it's not on the website right now, but coming to the Surterra website near you pretty quickly. Is that right, Forrest?
Actually, Jay, do you want to take this one?
Sure, yeah. Our product information on the website should give a short verbal description about the types of effects that you can expect from the Soothe and the Revive. And then, as Forrest mentioned, we're working on getting patient fronting information about terpene profiles so that can be more readily accessible to folks. And further, just to kind of reiterate what I mentioned earlier, the Soothe is going to be more relaxing and the Revive is going to be more uplifting. So it's kind of 2 opposite sides of the spectrum for those products. And we'll be happy to answer those questions for you in store or over the phone if you ever have them, or need any kind of clarifying information about what you see on our website.
Right. Now, Janice asked the question of, do you get a copy of the slide presentation after this? The answer is yes. Following this presentation, you'll get an email. It'll have a link to a YouTube video of the presentation. You'll get a copy of the slides and also a copy of the questions and answers. We're also going to be doing in the near future just a Q&A, frequently asked questions video as well, to be able to help get a lot of the questions answered that people have about medical cannabis. This is interesting. When buying from a dispensary, does this dispensary know what you've bought from another dispensary? You want to take that one, Jay or Forrest?
Yeah, I can absolutely answer this. I can at least speak for Surterra in saying that we can pull up your purchase history for what you've bought from Surterra before only. So if that can be really useful for patients who might not remember exactly what they got last time, but they really liked it, or maybe it didn't work so well for them. We have access to all of that information, so that way you don't have to worry about keeping your product labels or your receipts or anything like that. But when it comes to being able to see what you've bought at other dispensaries, we don't have access to that information. The most that we can see is on the state registry website. We have a record of the milligrams that have been dispensed to you and where those milligrams were dispensed, but we have no idea what products you actually bought. Sometimes folks come in all of the time and they mention to us kind of a general gist of other products at different dispensaries that they might have purchased. And so, thankfully we can use some of our personal experience to be able to help clarify that, or we can look quickly at other dispensaries' websites to try to see what kind of products they might have gotten, if that's something that is useful to guiding them in that moment. But in terms of having any actual accessible records that we can see from other dispensaries, we don't have that. So
Yeah,
we can see
your medical
what we bought from us,
information
but
is private and kept that way. I think that's really important. At the bottom line of that one. For CBM to form, THC has to age. So does it age before the consumers buy it? I think I'll let you, Jay and Forrest, let you take that one.
Yeah, so something that I mentioned a little bit earlier is that we don't have too many products that are going to include CBN at the point of purchase. So that's something hopefully that we're working on expanding so that we have even more versatility when it comes to the range of cannabinoids that we offer in our different products. But when it comes to what you're buying in the store at the moment that you're buying it, you're going to just really find those CBD and THC ratios. And from the earlier portions of this presentation, and especially in that video, you were able to kind of learn how CBN develops from aging or from drying. So it's definitely possible that strains that you buy, especially if you go through, especially your flower at a slower pace, some of that THC can convert over to CBN, but that's not going to be something that is too heavily present at the time that you purchase it.
Right. It's there. So Susie asked a great question. Is there research about how medical marijuana interacts with chemo and radiation cancer treatments? The doctors say stop taking antioxidants and high dose vitamins during chemo because they work against what chemotherapy is trying to accomplish. Any information? This is a very sensitive subject because I follow cancer research very, very carefully because I have some family members that are personally involved here. I should first of all point out is yes, there is cancer research being done, but because the United States has cancer as a Schedule 1, or excuse me, medical marijuana as a Schedule 1 drug, there is no research being done here in the United States. I think that's something that we need to really turn around here in the United States. We need to get caught up with the rest of the world. Now, I will tell you, for example, there's one place, Dr. Cristina Sanchez in Spain, 26 years ago, was built a lab by the country of Spain to be able to study cancer and cannabis. And she's done a great job of that. She has over 1,200 studies on that. So there is work that's being done. There is a major effort right now being done in Canada. McGill University and is doing a lot of work in the cancer space and publishing a lot of information. Some of it's still work in process, but it's not necessarily finalized, but there's a lot of great research being done. I will not underestimate the amount of work that the Israelis have done. Israelis really are the leader for this particular space. So the answer is yes, but we also know that what a lot of people use medical cannabis for when they're using chemo is really to counteract the effects of chemo after the treatments, not during the treatments, but after the treatments. Because after the treatments, getting your appetite back, being able to get your motivation back, getting your mood back, let's put it that way, is really, really important. So I think that, doctors are giving the best advice that they have. I think right now, everybody's searching for the right answer for cancer. There's a lot of different angles that come at this. Rick Simpson, for example, with RSO oil, has done a great job in this particular space. We know that works. So the answer is yes, it's there. But I think really it's a matter of talking to your doctor and you yourself deciding what you want to do. I would not, if you're using and taking chemotherapy, listen to your doctor because that's what you're doing with this for. But cannabis used in conjunction can really help quite a bit. Amy, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. So a lot of the research coming out right now regarding marijuana and cancer, it's usually aimed more at nausea, vomiting, and pain associated with cancer or cancer treatments. A lot of that research is very positive. But again, we're still just doing research right now because again, it's a Schedule 1 narcotic in the United States. So we just have such a limited amount of research right now.
Sure. Yeah, and I think we're just the tip of the iceberg, but cannabis working with chemo is very effective. I have a good friend of mine who is in this particular process, and it's helped her quite a bit. So something to take a look at. Next question. What happened to Coral Reefer Balm? I guess I didn't know that you kind of made a change. I think this is right up your alley, Forrest.
Yeah, I'll take that. We still have it. It's just under a different name. So you can find it as the Fix. But as Jay was saying, we all love it. We all use it for our own headaches all the time. We live and swear by that. So definitely a favorite of ours, still available. It's just called the Fix now.
It's called the Fix, right? Okay, great. So there you go. So basically it's a rebranding, but it's pretty close to the same product. It's out there. Good to know, by the way. What experience, from experience, you must use THC with CBD to get off oxycodone? This is an interesting question. Jay, you want to take this one?
Yeah, it seems like this person is kind of reiterating what we mentioned earlier, where CBD can really help long term try to get more at the root of some of the withdrawal symptoms that you might experience, but THC is going to definitely provide more immediate relief when it comes to the symptoms that you might experience. So definitely using CBD and THC together can be really useful.
Right. It's there. One of the questions that comes up is my client takes medical marijuana for neuropathy, but says it doesn't help stop stop with the pain. Cannabis is good for neuropathy. We will be doing in June a webinar on neuropathy. Please tune in for that one. I would say if it's not working, you don't have the right terpene profile and the right cultivar. Your thoughts on that, Jay?
Yeah, precisely that. When I read that, it might just be particular products that are not working well for him. And so really trying other types of products, maybe at different ratios, maybe with different terpene profiles, is really going to be able to help find something that is going to be more effective because, like you said, THC can definitely help with neuropathy. So hopefully getting this person to really just experiment a little bit more, hold out just a little bit longer. I know it can be really difficult while you're experiencing pain to have to go through a trial and error process, but definitely hold out. And I have full faith that they'll be able to find some cannabis products that help alleviate them.
Right. And we just put in a link. Lee just put in a link to sign up for the neuropathy webinar coming up. That'll be a good one. That's one we pay a lot of attention to. It's been very popular in the past, so please join us for that. Is there any reason you cannot take marijuana with Prozac like certain milligrams? Amy, your comments on that?
Sure. So the gist of it is cannabis is going to be interacting with different receptors in the brain than Prozac. They are safe to use together. What I normally suggest for patients is anytime that you're starting a new medication, back off on your dose of cannabis and then reintroduce it slowly and see how you feel using those two things together. Especially, if you're adding a pain medication and antidepressant, anything like that, you want to back off the cannabis just a little bit, give the medication a chance to work and see how you feel with that medication, and then slowly start building up your cannabis routine again to find that spot where you're comfortable.
Right. Cool. Good answer. It really helps quite a bit. Let's see. I think this goes back to your withdrawal from opioids. Should it be under the guidance of a healthcare provider? I believe that anytime you can get guidance from them, I think you should take advantage of it. Your thoughts on that, Amy?
I would absolutely agree with this. Anytime a person is withdrawing from especially an opioid or alcohol, it should be under the guidance of a healthcare provider. They are going to provide safety. They're going to provide guidance. They're going to just make sure that you're doing it in the safest way possible with the fewest amount of side effects or harm to you.
Right. Next question is about Prozac. I think we've answered that one. I think we kind of took care of that one. Keith asked the question, what product has the most THC to have the most effective feeling high on how you can use it or what product you can buy? I'm not quite clear about what the question is. Jay, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this kind of might refer back to the sometimes misconception that folks can have where they're really just looking for the highest level of THC because they think that's going to be most impactful for them. So I think, again, just mentioning how CBD and THC and terpenes work well together to provide that entourage effect can be really most helpful in feeling like these products are most effective for you. So I would say don't be distracted by THC percentages and really, really invest in products that are going to offer you that range of THC, CBD, and a terpene profile that works best for you and what you're looking for to be able to find what might be most effective.
Yeah, if there's nothing that you get from this particular webinar today, it's that different cannabinoids will help you with different conditions. And THC is not the answer to everything. There is a recreational use of THC to get high. And, it's like alcohol. Some people like 151 Bacardi and some people don't. But I think that when it comes to cannabis and medical marijuana, really pay attention to the cultivars. The cultivar is the combination of cannabinoids and also terpenes and flavonoids that really address your particular condition. You do that and you'll get the medical relief you're looking for. If you want to get high, that's a different game. And again, that's where you're looking at THC levels, and it's two different uses, and it's really up to you as to which way you want to go. Jianna had a great question. I guess this is Forrest, right up to you. They've signed up for the loyalty program, but haven't received rewards. Haven't received any rewards programs this year.
Yeah, I would say there's definitely something wrong, and you can feel free to call our customer service center. They will be able to troubleshoot it, most likely sending an email back to me and my team to figure out what the issue is. But if you are actively shopping, you should actively be getting rewarded, including discounts and other forms. We often give exclusive deals, first time looks at things, new products and like that for customers who are part of our loyalty program. So I would say give us a call and let us troubleshoot it for you to make sure that you're getting taking advantage of that.
Sure. And I would say, I know I get at least once a week email from you. So hopefully there must be something wrong there. And again, get a hold of the customer support center and they can be able to help you with that right there. I think we've covered most of the questions. Hopefully we've exhausted those. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. We still have a number of people. Wait a minute, one last account have just come in. I have MS and also a negative reaction to caryophyllene. Which products should I be using for muscle spasms and even depression? Jay, you want to take that one?
Sure. I would say something that might help with the muscle spasms specifically is going to be Tranquil. I am pretty certain that that one is low in caryophyllene, so that should be safe there. And then sometimes with those high experiences with pain or even just unrelated, folks can experience depression symptoms as well. And so while that with such a high level of CBD is not going to particularly help with depression, we do have other types of products that will. So whether it's flour or our vape products or even those chocolate bars, those can be really useful with depression symptoms. So again, I would really recommend having those conversations with the folks at your local dispensary or with our call center to really make sure that we are actively checking the terpene profile so that we know that that particular batch of our inventory is going to be reflective of what's typical and that we can really help you avoid caryophyllene when you come in.
Great. Well, thank you. I think we've exhausted most of the questions. I do want to say one thing. You brought up the Heights dark chocolates. That is one of my favorites. I have to tell you, I have one complaint. It's too good. What you want to do is you want to try to take more of it. I guess being a chocoholic, if you like one square, you take another one. Be very, very careful. I mean, I think you've done a really good job of putting together a quality product. I think both good and bad. Okay, it's there. I want to thank everybody for we've been. Thank you very much. We've been doing this for an hour and a half, and I want to thank everybody for still hanging in there. I know there's been a lot of good questions. This is something that hopefully, if just one person, we can help just one person get their life back, we would really, hopefully, this has been successful. I want to thank, first of all, I want to thank Surterra for sponsoring this and being able to answer some questions for us. This has been very, very helpful. And then also, I want to thank, Forrest and Jay, any comments? Final comments?
This has been excellent to be a part of. We really appreciate being here tonight.
Yeah, just to reiterate that this has definitely been one of the most exciting opportunities that I've had with my time here at Surterra. This education platform is really important and I can already see it being incredibly impactful for our patients. So I am really looking forward to being able to share this in a more ongoing and sustainable manner. And thank you all for hosting us and for inviting us to be a part of it.
Well, thank you. We really, really appreciate it. And I think it's important that make sure that you, again, check out the weekly, check out the weekly emails, because that's going to be something that I think is important. I'm going to give a shameless plug. Next week, we do pain management. Please join us for that, because I think that's one of our more popular webinars. And if pain, whether it's acute or chronic, is one of the issues you're dealing with, please join us. We can help you discuss that and give you some particular direction to go with that particular condition. I want to thank some of them, Amy, for being helpful. Amy, thank you very much. Some great questions, some great comments. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, just remember that start low, go slow. Medical marijuana is a very personal journey, and it's just going to take time to get there.
And journaling, that's important.
Journaling, absolutely.
Yeah, it's very, very important. I want to thank our moderators, Lee and Leah. They've done a great job in the background. They do most of the work. So thank you very much for that. And I want to thank Surterra for sponsoring this. And I'm going to give a final shout out to Alyssa Katera, who is the one who came up with the idea of this particular seminar program. So please join us next week. We look forward to seeing you at 6 o'clock next week for pain management. And again, thank you everyone for joining us and for staying tuned. Thank you.